Kgaiso, what an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio today. I absolutely love your energy, and I think you bring in so much interesting insights in terms of the conversation we're going to have. But before we get into the conversation, which I hope will sit a lot around customer and how that intersects with product and with purpose and how entrepreneurs can think about this as they think about growing their businesses, I first want to say hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Kgaiso, who are you?
So my name is Kgaiso Mokgethi. I'm Pretoria girl. But over and above Pretoria girl and a long career history, I'm a lover of life, a lover of good things. And what brings me the most joy is laughter and being around people that I love. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. And so, being a lover of life and bringing laughter and joy into life, what do you do and how does that intersect with what you've just described yourself to be?
Good question. So I'm the head of marketing for ClearScore South Africa. ClearScore is a fintech. And we basically give our users credit scores for free. So that's what I do. And I try and make fun of that. And I have the most fun probably on digital and social and speaking to our users often. They inspire me just to see how people are different and how people have different life stories and different aspirations, like what we were talking about earlier. And for me, that's just the most interesting. It's just seeing people unfold in who they are, in their finances, and in their own personal lives as well. Because money is a big part of who we are as well. So yeah.
What is thrilling me in terms of what you're describing around what you do is you're bringing in a sense of curiosity. You seem to be very curious about your users. Is it okay if I interchange the word user with customer? And if it's not, why not?
I think it depends on the category, right? So if usually a customer, if I'm buying a tangible product, is perfect and you can use it interchangeably. But ideally, if you're speaking in the tech world, you usually are a user, especially if it's a front-end facility, you end up being a user, but you're also a consumer of that product, right? So I guess my long and short answer is we can, but usually maybe because I'm becoming a techie, now we call everyone users and non-users and in market and out of market. And yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also maybe something interesting around that, even for businesses that are creating tangible products, in the sense that when you think customer, you think transaction. When you think user, you're thinking somebody who's actually deriving value from the thing that you're offering. And so I'm comfortable with us maybe sitting in the world of users, even though I'm not a techie, but you are.
Aspiring techie.
Forming, emerging techie.
Yeah.
And so when we go down this road and we start thinking about our user, our consumer, our customer, how would you suggest an entrepreneur thinks about this entity, this individual or this group of individuals in terms of, because you already started talking about categories. So it seems as if there's some method in terms of looking at the people who consume your product or your service. Where do we start when we're thinking about them? That's a very big question.
It's a huge question. I think a good place to start for me, having been in the industry for a couple of years, is actually just starting. So the big thing is that we have digital now. So 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was there, but we weren't using it. So if I was an entrepreneur, what I found with digital, my consumer tells me who they are and they tell me what they're interested in and what they like. So for me, usually I'm like, just start, use digital. You can start with a tiny budget. You get a sense of small things, region, gender, what people respond to. And you then can work with that. So you don't just do work or you don't create products because you like it and you like it for this segment. Because I've often been pleasantly surprised, like, oh, wow, I thought this product would work with an older demographic, but it's actually not. It's working much better with a younger demographic. So for me, it would be just use the digital platforms that we have and work it from there. And I also believe that our users always tell us their story. And we just need to then listen to those stories. And that's when it comes into product design, right? Because now Nabisa tells you her story, tells you what she likes, tells you how often she uses your product. That's so many, what we would call a user journey, to understand at every given point, Nabisa is going to buy my water again. How often does she buy my water? She buys my water every 2 weeks. How much water does she buy? Do I need to increase quantity? Am I happy with what she's doing? And you start influencing the consumer, but you're also understanding their own patterns. So we're not as intrusive. If you remember back in the days of like very mark kind of advertising, where we're all doing very mark kind of advertising, very intrusive, sell it, buy it now, buy lots of it, wah, 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 wah. But what digital is forcing us to do, or even not even forcing us, but it's giving all of us in business a chance to understand better.
Where I get quite pleased is this idea of collecting stories and understanding our customers, our consumers, our users as people who hold stories within them. And so it's our responsibility to discover those stories. How far can we go in terms of telling our story back to our users? Because I think I'm going to be curious around at what point can I introduce my purpose, the purpose of my business, to my user, and hopefully that can start influencing their story, and can it then maybe go back then into product design. But I'm really, as an entrepreneur, I really want to get my purpose across. When does that happen with my user?
I really think at the beginning. So one of my favorite brands, it's I wish I could remember the name now. They make glasses. They make wine glasses, Ngwenya glasses.
Yes.
And I love the design and I love the story of Ngwenya glasses and the recycling, African product and.
Yeah, it's an impact-driven, sustainable brand. Yeah.
Right? So I loved that. I first saw it at a restaurant or used the glass at a restaurant and I was like, tell me more. And it was luckily one of those restaurants that they just did tell me more. And for me, that's one of the most beautiful brands that I feel like they tell you your purpose. You actually buy into it. And right now, all my wine glasses, bubbles, everything.
Mine too.
Right? It's in Ngwenya glasses. And that's such a simple example of when a business shares their purpose up front and it resonates with the user or the consumer. And the nice thing about that is that also I think a lot of brands being at peace with you can't resonate, your purpose will not resonate with everybody, because that would just also be only certain brands will win, but also they win in certain segments. So if we think of the big brands, if you think of Coke, there was a time where it resonated with everybody, but I can only imagine now as people get more health conscious and that they've had to relook and see how their purpose and what they're selling, and we've seen their product extensions. So someone was saying, if KFC launched now, it wouldn't have been an amazing takeoff just because of the purpose and how people are now consuming food and consuming product. And it's that, for me, it's like it changes with time. It also goes back to being connected with your consumers. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to always have a research cadence. And often people think, I'll assume entrepreneurs will think that research is expensive.
Yes.
But there's so many cool tools like Qualtrics, where you just sign up online. SurveyMonkey. I almost said it the other way around.
Survey, yes.
I was like, no, don't do that. But that helps you, and all you need there is a cadence and consistency. Sharing your purpose, seeing where the market is. Because sometimes you can shift slightly, obviously not completely out of your purpose, but you start to understand, these are the trends. How does this sit with my purpose? Or how do I even communicate my purpose in a way that it resonates with the current trend? Or whichever direction that the market is moving in. So
No,
Those
it's great.
are my thoughts.
You are the subject matter expert, and so please go deep. And so if we're thinking about introducing the idea of, centralizing research in terms of understanding our consumers so that hopefully that one introduces our purpose to our customers, our consumers, our users, and at the same time it perhaps influences where we go with our product design. Where would you suggest that capability sits in a growing business? Because, these are entrepreneurs who may be teams of 3 or 5 people, 10 at most. Who carries the can for this?
If we're talking startup in a small business, at the beginning, my recommendation would be the founder, because that's where the heart of it all sits. And as the business grows, you could partner with different agencies or even just consult with someone to go through your questions, even at the beginning, like this is what we'd like to understand and to know. You can consult, but that's also budget dependent and very mindful of that, right? So for me, the founder would be the best person to have those kinds of conversation. And also they would know intuitively, because a lot of things we know them intuitively. He or she knows what they're driving and what they would like to understand. They already have ideas around their growth strategy or markets or products that they want to test. And research is also a good place to get a sense of, let's say you're wearing a beautiful outfit, of saying we want to grow our prints. And then research would be, is there a market big enough for print? So even if you're doing a purpose research, you can actually at the end, I often do that, ask random questions. If we could sell something else, what would you be? What are you not willing to buy online? What are you willing to buy online? And those are just clues that you generally won't get in a boardroom, because we all like similar usually in a company, and you have limited sense of insights.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm still going to sit a little bit around research, because I think I'm going to project myself as a former entrepreneur rather than entrepreneur these days. And I find I work very much from a place of intuition. And so the notion of research, or even introducing what feels almost more mathematical and scientific methodology into my ways, can feel a little bit intimidating. And so I'm asking some specific questions here to kind of demystify this process. And so I've seen and read that when we start researching and getting insights from our users, at some point we start talking about segmentation. What do we mean by that? And if so, how can we get to a point where we're segmenting in a way that's appropriate for our businesses?
So yeah, it can be overwhelming. So I'm going to acknowledge that, because I'm also a marketer. And, when one started, it was like you were studying marketing to run away from numbers. And now the numbers are here with us. They're here to stay. So I think the first thing I would say is that use available tools to you. There's a lot of, it's actually incredible how much content there is online of the different research tools you can use. There's different programs that you can use. Most basic, Excel. And Excel is actually magic for you to be able to analyze your data. And if you don't have that skill, there are so many amazing analysts in this country. I often think this country has got so much talent, and people are willing to consult, to freelance, and analysts are one of the most curious humans. When you get that big data set, let's say you've done 2,000, you've done a survey reaching out to 2,000 respondents, and you get it back and you're like, where to start? So if Excel is not your thing, for me, I always have an analyst as a best friend. I think it's such an important partnership to have. So that would be my first thing. If Excel is not your thing, if you're not winning through YouTube and learning through those portals using programs like R or Python, then you can actually partner with someone who is in that business, and they can help you understand your different cohorts, understand when people take up products. Let's say seasons are changing now, you're in a product that's about seasonality, because then you can say, these are my users over summer, over spring, over autumn? What are those behavioral cycles? So often when people talk about segmentation, we all gravitate towards demographics, which is your age, gender, and all those things, and psychographics. But I often feel like that's just the beginning. That's just like, and
That's
now
basics.
that's basics, and we almost get into a point now where does it really matter that they're male or female, they're using your product? But what you can use the data to tell the story of your user. So for me, there's a word that we often use, segmentation, or you can create what we call personas, where it's a story of saying this person buys, let's say you're selling soup. This person has soup right through the year. They're in market right through the year. They love their soup. They pair it with everything, so we have high utilization. They happen to live in XYZ, and maybe there's some insights there. Then you have people or consumers who only will have soup over winter. What do you do with that group of humans? What is their story? What is their belief system around soup and when they consume soup? And how do you create additional what we call events for them to consume more soup? Or how do you change their narrative of what they believe about soup? And one of the advice that I would give to entrepreneurs is look at different categories of brands. So the alcohol category, they have killed this occasions marketing. Whether you're sad, happy, or
lonely, or lots of people.
They have created the occasion of that there's a place for you to have a glass of something. And for me, that's what I would advise a lot of entrepreneurs. See, where does your category sit? How many more events can you create around it? Or if it's a big purchase, what is the cycle of purchase? What are the products in between? So,
you think about the smartphone companies who have managed to convince us that we need to buy a new device every 2 years, if not annually, and you really get pressed to buy that new device because they've created that event, even if it's still quite useful for another 3 years.
Right. And in between, what do they sell you? They sell you new apps,
accessories.
They sell you accessories. So they're creating moments for you to continue engaging and for you to continue being what we'd call someone who is in the market. Your size of purchase might vary, but you continue to be in the market, and that's what you want to do.
You want to add to the stories that your consumer is going to keep telling about themselves through your product, and of course, hopefully amplifying your purpose through your product, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
I'm learning as well. Also, I'm so into this and so intrigued by it. And I feel like we could almost have another conversation probably around personas and go much deeper into this. But I think for now, this has been really helpful. Thank you so much for the very practical sort of direction in terms of what the entrepreneurs can do and how they can think about their users. And of course, also a little bit of hints around what they can use and what they can find online. So I'm going to wrap up with some quick fire questions.
Can I go home?
After this.
Wonderful.
Purpose-led product design means?
It means creating products that connect with your user and your consumer.
Stories matter to a business because?
Because businesses are made up of stories, right? Yeah.
I'm so grateful for this conversation because you've brought such a human-centered aspect to thinking about our customers, our customer experiences, and of course, what to do with the stories that our customers are telling us. And so also thank you for giving me the permission to interchange between customer, user, consumer, all over the show, but we know what we mean. So thank you, Khai.
Thank you so much.